Usually it takes 80% of your time to do 80% of the job, and then it takes 80% of your time to do that last 20%. In other words, don't be a perfectionist.
Hello and welcome to the Studio Sherpas podcast, episode 106, where our number one goal is to help you grow your video business. Oh, hey, hi, happy new year. It is Ryan, host of this show. Here we go. It's 2019. I am so happy that you're here, and I want to share a weakness of mine with you. This is gonna be a little awkward. I think I'm addicted to peanut M&Ms. Seriously. I need help. I need somebody. If they're anywhere, I will eat them. If they're in somebody else's hands, I will grab them and eat them. It's weird, but I like them a lot. So what is your favorite memory from this holiday season? Man, I soaked up all the moments. I mean, they weren't all amazing. There was plenty of tears from my three little ones, and frustrating moments as a parent trying to teach your kids gratitude and the important things in life, what those are, and they don't really have anything to do with presents. So super challenging time as a parent, but also just so rewarding and filled with lots and lots of little moments that my wife and I will cherish forever. I think one of my favorite parts was probably each evening as we got closer and closer to Christmas, the kids counting down, and my three-year-old holding up her fingers, trying to figure out how many days were left before Christmas, and she's just trying to figure out like how many to hold, how many fingers to hold up, and even though there were tears in some of those moments where, you know, we'd tell her there were 6 days left and she'd be holding up like 9 or 10, and we'd be trying to explain that no, this is 6 or whatever, and super funny. Even though she would get frustrated, it was so good. I hope your time with friends and family was super rich and memorable. Well, guess what? The work, my friend, is still here. There were emails in my inbox when I got back to work. There were things left undone from 2018, but that's not gonna stop me. That's not gonna stop us from taking 2019 by the horns and saying, yo, you're mine, 2019. Let's do this. And so here we go with the podcast. Today's episode is all about creating the right formula that is going to lead to a successful video business. And our guest today is no stranger to success. Parker Walbeck from Time Filmmaker has experienced some incredible success and has worked with some major brands and has been all over the world doing a lot of stuff that a lot of us wish that we could do. And also he's got thousands of students that he trains on how to become full-time in this work. Some of the things that you're going to take away from this episode include highest value activity. What is it and how it can make or break your everyday effectiveness? The importance of fee to free and how it can help you work on the types of jobs you actually want to work on. And finally, what it takes to become a master at your craft and how much more important the journey is rather than this elusive destination. If you think sitting back and waiting for your amazing video work to land your next big job, you are missing the point. After listening to this episode, you should have a very clear idea on what it's going to take to move the needle of your business forward. If you don't like the kind of work that you're doing, or you don't like the kinds of clients that you're working with, or you don't like the budgets that you're being given, we're going to show you a way out. But it's going to take some work on your part and not just busy work, not just like, oh, I don't have something to do, so I'll just, check my email again. Parker and I share in our own experiences about the right kind of work you need to be busying yourself with. So make sure to stick around to the end of the episode as Parker has some added value for our audience. That's you, some stuff for you. I am so excited about this episode and having a rock star like Parker to kick off the new year for us. It's a huge treat. So here we go, episode 106 with Parker Walbeck from Time Filmmaker. Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the Studio Sherpas podcast. My name is Ryan Coral, and today we are with Parker Walbeck from Time Filmmaker. What's up, man?
How's it going? Good to be here.
Super. I'm like looking across at the screen and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the guy I've seen like multiple videos of him talking, and now he's talking to me. This is very fun.
You see all my annoying ads online.
No, man, it's good. So for those of you guys who don't know, Parker worked for DevinSuperTramp for 3 years, traveling the world, shooting content for big name brands, and then started his own production company and YouTube channel, and eventually built the online film school, Full-Time Filmmaker, to start training others how to make a living in the video industry. Pretty cool. I actually, until I got your bio, I was like, DevinSuperTramp. I'm like,
who is that?
Is that familiar to me or not? And I like Google, pull up YouTube, I hop on, I'm watching this stuff. I'm like, this is amazing. I've never, what the heck? Who is this guy? And the video, all the stuff that he's got is crazy.
Had you not ever seen his stuff?
I don't, well, you know, if you would send me like maybe like his biggest video, I had just watched like one where like this Super Smash Brothers like fighting. Watched another like a Fortnite one. I'm like, oh my gosh, my son would love this. This is good stuff. What was it like working with DevinSuperTramp? That's not really his like real name, is it?
Devin Graham is his name.
Okay.
DevinSuperTramp is his YouTube name, I guess you could say. But yeah, working with Devin was a blast. I mean, it was every bit as fun as it looks, except it was a lot of hard work, as most filmmakers know. But no, the intense adrenaline stuff we do and just the world traveling was an amazing experience. And that's how I honestly got started in filmmaking was I watched his videos on YouTube.
Oh, wow.
About 6 or 7 years ago. And he inspired me to buy a camera and try out video for a living. I was always told growing up that you can't do it. You can't make it in this industry and raise, support a family. And I listened to the critics, of course, until I saw someone doing it online, this DevinSuperTramp guy. And luckily he was doing behind the scenes, showing how he was doing it and what cameras he used. So I bought the same camera as him and just started teaching myself. And as fate would have it, about 3 to 4 months after I bought my first camera, I randomly met him because he actually lives pretty close to me.
Oh, wow.
And, started picking his brain, like, who's helping you, man? For you. And he was in a perfect position where he needed to bring somebody on. And so I said, yeah, I'll work for free for a few months and just show you what I got. And so I did. And he liked me and we started working together full time. And so I dropped out of college and started traveling the world with this guy.
Oh my gosh. I didn't realize that you dropped out of college.
I did. Yeah. I didn't.
What did your parents think about that?
They knew I was a hardworking person and they would know I'd make the best out of whatever decisions I made. So I'm sure they were a little frazzled by it, but within a year or two, they saw the fruits and, felt okay with it.
Yeah. It took a little while, but that's as a parent, it's got to be like, yeah, you want to be an artist? Yeah, great. We support you, son.
That'll be fun.
Yeah. So your work is so good. Your energy, your pacing, the look, the feel, it's super good. And I just feel like what you are doing and the fact that you're teaching others, it's just that's really good stuff. So kudos to you for just taking that initiative and doing that. What are you working on right now?
So I'm actually doing nothing film related.
I thought you were going to just say nothing. I'm just I do podcasts occasionally.
I don't do anything all day. No, I'm actually a work addict, and I'll talk about this later, but I feel like that's what I attribute a lot of my success to is I love to work. I'm a quarter Japanese. It's kind of in my blood to just be an efficiency monster and want to spend every second of every day doing something productive. But right now I'm actually creating a course teaching people how to create, market, and sell courses. So a lot of my video skills come in handy because obviously I'm shooting tutorials all day and editing and creating marketing and advertising material. But yeah, a lot of my attention right now is going to more of the online marketing and advertising industries and teaching people not only how to create video and be creative, but how to learn some distribution skills along with that to help the companies that are creating videos for to know how to utilize those videos and market in Facebook advertising campaigns and whatnot, and learning some of those digital online advertising skills. So that's what I'm currently doing while simultaneously trying to run this full-time filmmaker company, while simultaneously growing a YouTube channel and trying to stay on top of creating content to stay relevant. So got my hands full.
Get your hands full. What obviously the stuff that you're building right now is probably the thing that's most exciting, but as you
Right.
kind of like step back and look at all the things that you're a part of, like what do you think what brings the most life to you in the work that you get to do? Or what aspect of it maybe?
What drives me the most is growth. I just like to grow as an individual in my personal skill sets. I honestly consider myself more of an entrepreneur than a filmmaker. Filmmaking just happens to be the current trending fun thing that I jumped into and seemed like something that would be a good business opportunity, and it was, and I happened to be pretty good at it. And with a lot of work and learning, I was able to turn it into something to support a family. But yeah, to me, the biggest things that drive me are just anything that pushes me to progress and to learn new things. And so that's why I kind of have my hands dipped in a bunch of different buckets, because I'm always trying to expand my knowledge and my skill base.
What challenges? I mean, you've been a filmmaker. How long have you been a full-time filmmaker? See what I did there?
Full-time filmmaker. Yeah. So, I mean, it took me about 3 or 4 months of learning from YouTube. Like I said, I didn't go to film school.
Yeah.
I took some video production classes at the school I was going to at SUU in Southern Utah, but they weren't really they weren't great programs is what I'm saying. They weren't geared towards filmmaking.
Not to name any names.
Right. No, it was a great school. I had great experiences. They offered other things that allowed me to grow. But specifically the education surrounding video production wasn't anything special. And so I got most of my education starting out just from watching YouTube tutorials. And after about, like I said, 3 or 4 months of that, landed that crazy opportunity with DevinSuperTramp. And then from there on, it was mostly just on-job experience and personal mentoring from Devin, teaching me the ins and outs of the way he operated, and then just learning from him and eventually expanding upon his methods and developing my own, right? So, that was kind of the get-go of how I got started. And that was 7 years ago. So it was about 23. Wow. Now I'm about 29, almost 30. I'm getting old.
Dude, you're getting super old.
Getting really old. So yeah, about 6 or 7 years that I've been doing it full time. With Devin, I was full time as an employee, then branched off after about 3 years of working for him, quit and started my own production company. Just got to a point where it was like, I had a lot of fun with him, but I wanted again to grow and have some personal skills of learning how to run my own business and establish my own future for my own family, not being dependent on someone else's success. Right.
The entrepreneur inside of you.
Just had to get out and be my own boss, you know? So the wife luckily was supportive, who I quit my job working for him the month we got married. So that was very awesome of her to support me in that.
Yeah.
A great wife is key, guys.
To seriously.
Success and anything. She was super supportive and allowed me to pursue. And probably the first 2 or 3 months, I was just kind of scraping by, trying to land my own jobs. And this is one of the principles I teach heavily in Full-Time Filmmaker, because people always are asking, well, how do you make money in this? How do you get started in that career path? How do you go from no one knows who you are to people are lining up to give you their money to do a project? And the biggest thing that I tell people is to just create content. Is to put yourself out there, create, put it online, put it on YouTube, Vimeo, Facebook, Instagram, let people know what you're doing, share your work. And probably the first few videos you put out when you're getting going, a lot of people aren't going to respond to really well. If you've given yourself enough learning time and enough practice, then maybe you will have some good responses. But I'd say the first 4 or 5 videos I created just in my backyard or with my friends making a music video or whatever. I mean, they were crap. You look back now and you're like,
oh my gosh. Yeah.
But it's like, that's how you get started. And that's what you have to do. You have to start somewhere. And the only way to grow is to act. And as you act, you gain more confidence, and that confidence allows you to grow more. And it's just this vicious cycle of growth and confidence and growth and confidence. And if you never choose to take those initial opportunities to grow, you'll never gain enough confidence to keep going and pursuing, and eventually get good enough to where people are paying you. So yeah, I'd say it took a few months before I finally started getting a few offers, and it was usually free or dirt cheap, right? It's like, hey, I have a wedding and I don't have money,
Right.
but
Right.
you can shoot it if you want. And I'm like, absolutely, like take
Yeah.
every opportunity you can to grow. And as you learn on somebody else's dime, or if it's
Hmm.
free, learn on somebody else's, unfortunately somebody else's wedding. If they don't have the money, if they do have the money, then tell them to hire someone who knows what they're doing. But
Right. Right.
but if they're just like, I'll take whatever I can get, then take the opportunity,
Yeah.
and those opportunities that I took for dirt cheap or for free were the ones that gave me confidence to take paying gigs the
Hmm.
next time around. And every piece of content you create becomes your new portfolio piece to help you
Yeah.
land the next gig. And it's a slow process. I mean, about 6 months in, actually 4 or 5 months in, right before Devin hired me on, I almost quit filmmaking. I almost gave it
Oh,
up
wow.
because I said, I'm broke.
Yeah.
I've just dumped like $3,000 into camera gear. I um I'm making a little bit of money with this, but I'm also going to college and trying to pay
Yeah.
rent and feed myself. And I was down to nothing, had no money left to my name, and was about to give up and quit. And that's when I started landing enough jobs to keep me going a little longer until I landed an actual job with Devin, and that kind of spurted things. So the biggest thing is just to create content. It's a slow process, but create
Hmm.
content until you get good enough. And the biggest thing for me, and what I tell people is how I get jobs is my work speaks for itself.
Mm.
At a certain point, you get good enough to where your work speaks for itself. And I've honestly never done any marketing for my production company. I never reached out to any companies. I mean, when I was starting out, obviously I did. But now that I'm established and people know who I am and have seen my content, I've never reached out looking for a job. I'm just getting inquiries all the time and just picking and choosing which ones have the right budgets and are most fun for me to shoot. And having that luxury just comes down to having now, 6 years later, created hundreds of video projects, having had so much content put out there and so many examples of what your work looks like, and having so many people out there who want you to replicate work for their companies.
Yeah, that's really good. One of the things that I talk about often is this idea of the creative bias, where we this is hilarious. We tell people, hey, you can't trust your work to sell itself, right? But I try to preface this with, like, there are some people who either are so stinking talented out of the gate, or through tons and tons of practice, trial, error, years and years, eventually you can get to that place. But
Right.
for most of us, it's like we've got to continue that hustle. And
Mhm.
it would be amazing. I mean, I've been doing this for 14 years, and our work is good, but there's still a part of me that's like, man, like I gotta get out there. I gotta make some phone calls. But then I look at somebody whose work is like yours, and it's like, yes, like that work is beautiful. That work, uh, that gets people to say, like, shoot, there's something real different about this stuff. So I think it's yes to both. What I always try to encourage people is, like, don't even think about that, 10 years down there, 60, whatever, when
Right.
you can just sit back, because what you need to be concerned with right now is doing the kind of work that brings you life. So if that means you have to discount something or do it for free or whatever,
For
put
sure.
that on your site so people see that, so they hire you for that. And then maybe eventually one day you can sit back and the phone's just going to ring, or you're going to get the email and say, like, hey, we want you. But in the meantime, that's not reality for people for a long time, right? You hustled, and just kind of seeing what you've done and hearing you talk, you're not one of those guys that just sits back and waits for the phone
No.
to ring, right?
And when
You're doing
I say that, right, and when I say I don't market myself, people come to me. I do market myself in the sense that I'm always creating content,
right.
right?
Yes,
And so
exactly.
it's like,
Yep.
yeah, I'm not like cold calling, but the way in which I market myself is constantly creating. And for example, um, soon after I quit working for Devin, I was just trying to think of some ideas, creative stuff, just to get noticed online and to create content that people cared about. And I just bought a Red camera.
Ooh.
This is actually just after I launched Time Filmmaker. So I had some funds to buy a Red camera because I had just sold a bunch of memberships. But I said, let's do a comparison of my iPhone versus a Red and just show people, not that the Red isn't a lot better, but that you can get some pretty comparable stuff with an iPhone if you know how to use it well, right? So I put up a YouTube video comparison. It got picked up by Petapixel and some other sites.
Oh, man.
And kind of went semi-viral and started growing my YouTube channel. And about a year after I launched that video, LG was coming out with their V30 phone. And they emailed me and said, hey, we'd love to do a promotional piece similar to what you did with the iPhone, but with a new phone coming out. And we have a huge budget for you to work with if you'll do a YouTube video. Yeah, that you'll do a similar video to that with our phone. And I'm like, heck yeah, like I get to work with LG now. And so that's an example of, I wasn't sitting on my butt just waiting for emails to come in. It's like, no, be proactive. Let's think of something creative, something that people care about, that's relevant, that's shareable, that is trending or whatever, and attract those types of clients to me. And I always tell people that one of the biggest principles I live by is called free to fee. It's like, if you don't have work, then go do some free work. Yeah. And when people will see what you're doing, see that free work, it will attract people to give you a fee. And that was a prime example of working for free. It was like a 2-week project to do my iPhone versus Red video. But a year later, and again, no fruits for a long time, but a year later, I get a giant, I can't remember the budget. It was like $40,000, $50,000 budget to shoot for LG. And it's like, man, a free project turns into a $50,000 client. And so that's just a prime example of being proactive, creating content, and marketing yourself through creation.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And it's like having that mindset of like being intentional. That was part of your strategy, whether or not you said this is going to be my strategy. Right. For you to just create, like doing that is huge. And I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I feel like that is something where somebody will create something. And I say somebody, like I can just see myself 10 years ago creating something, uploading it, putting it on my website, and then just waiting and hoping that the right person comes across it, instead of thinking like, okay, on to the next thing. Like, what's the next project? What's the next thing I can put up that, somebody might see? And, and like letting that be the strategy instead of, so the creative bias is kind of like, let's put it out there, sit back, wait. And like, you can't do that. And so many of us fall into that trap. So anyway, really, really good stuff. What about over the years, what would you say, what's one of the biggest challenges that you've had to face in your business in growing this thing?
I'd say that I mentioned the initial challenge was, and it depends on what stage you're in your business, but the initial challenge was having confidence to even give it a shot, to think, because you buy a camera, if you're getting started out, you buy a camera, you feel like every other Instagram mom and their new camera they just bought, and you're like, who the heck do I think I am, thinking I can buy a camera in this saturated market and stand out as someone who deserves people's money. And that's a big challenge that most people never overcome, is just having confidence. And one of the principles I teach a lot and live by is, I call it fake it till you make it. Even when I was working on big budget projects, I mean, I've worked with some of the biggest clients in the world, LG, Hyundai, Canon, just to name a few in the past year. And people don't realize this, but every project I work on, I'm faking it till I make it. Like I don't know what I'm doing 100%. I have a good enough, fundamental grounding to know I'll give them something usable. But every project scares me and should scare me if it's going to help me grow and expand as a filmmaker. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. They look at someone like me or someone who's a successful filmmaker making good money with big clients, and they think, oh, they know what they're doing. They're set in their ways. And if they are set in their ways, and there's some that may feel that way, then they're not growing and they're not getting better and they're not going to make it because other filmmakers are going to surpass them. And so I'm always taking projects that I feel are pushing me and helping me grow as a filmmaker. And during those projects, I literally am faking it till I make it, but being confident in that process, knowing I have enough skills, I know enough to make this work, to make this good. And the client will be happy because I'm going to give my best efforts. And if they're not, then we'll reshoot or whatever compromise we have to do. But I can't think back to any times where I've had a client just completely shut the project down and say, nope, this wasn't good enough. It's like, as long as they've seen what your work is currently and they're hiring you based off of that, then you should feel confident to know you should be able to create something similar to what you've already done and hopefully improve upon it and do some things that scare you, that push you outside your comfort zone, and get better every project you take. And that's how you continue to land higher and better clients.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I'm glad that you brought that up too, because it's really easy for me to sit back, go through your Instagram and be like, dang, man, everything is like super pretty. And it just, it's cut like awesome. And to just think like it just happens, but to know that like, no, man, like you got to take risks. You got to like say yes to stuff that you think you can do. You're just not exactly sure yet how you're going to do it. But to be afraid, that is, I think that's something that a lot of us are missing too, because, maybe we get the phone call from LG, but and I can think of, we got an RFQ from a university that we've done work with before, we have a relationship with, and I didn't submit the RFQ. As I read through it, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is like next level production.
Right.
And it's just so funny. I got a phone call from one of the guys that's head of the department. He's like, dude, why didn't you submit an RFQ? Like, we were hoping that you would. And I was like, man, like, it just seemed like, huge production house. It just seemed next level. And he was like shaking his head. And the whole time I'm like, oh my gosh, like we should have, right? But I was scared, and I think we can sometimes that is a disservice if we retreat and we don't do anything. But to be scared and let that motivate us to do something about it, that's really, really good advice. And I wish you would have told me that like 2 years ago. I probably would have at least attempted that RFQ.
Yeah, and another piece of advice I give is never compare. You mentioned you look at my Instagram. I do the same thing. You look at other filmmakers and you think, oh, how do they light like that? How do they? Yeah. That's next level. My stuff doesn't look like that. I always tell people, never compare yourself to other people. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday.
Yeah, that's good.
And as long as you're always personally progressing, you're going to be successful. When you compare yourself to other people, it makes you unconfident, which decreases the chance that you're going to take opportunities to grow, which means you're never going to get better.
Yeah, right. So. Yeah, and you just continue to beat yourself up, and it's just, it's too tough. Your competition isn't the studio down the street. It really should be yourself. It should be trying to be better than your last piece of work. And
for sure.
That's good. What other advice you got for me? No, I'm just kidding. When you talk about, all these different things that you're doing and knowing that, with client work and all this stuff, you talk about efficiency. What do you have any like tools or suggestions on like how to be efficient as a filmmaker in this sometimes usually chaotic world?
Again, I'm a Japanese efficiency monster, right? Every ticking second of the day has to be filled with something. So it comes kind of natural to me, but I've been trying to figure out with some of my full-time filmmaker students that are having a hard time succeeding or aren't getting a lot of work done. And I'm like, what is it? What are they doing that I am doing that is making me successful and that keeping them from being successful? So I actually hired on one of my full-time filmmaker students last year, and super talented kids, and brought him on to start doing some editing and shooting for me. And I'd give him a project, and about a week or two would go by, and I'd say, hey, how's it coming? And he says, oh, pretty good. I'm just stuck on this one part. And I'm thinking, well, it should have been done in like 2 days. I could have done it in 2 days. What's taken so long? Yeah. It's like, well, I get stuck, and then I don't know what to do, and then I procrastinate, and then I go watch TV or YouTube videos,
Right.
and it's like, what? But that's pretty common.
Yeah.
And I
Yes.
don't realize that because that's not how
Right.
my brain works.
Right.
But I don't realize that a lot of people just struggle with time management.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
don't know how to manage their time. They have their notifications turned on their phone, every Facebook tick, every Instagram like, every email, everything, every phone call they get, they answer. And I tell people, turn your notifications
Yeah.
off your phone. It usually takes, and I refer people to a guy named Peter Voogd, who is an entrepreneur dude that teaches people how to start businesses and to be productive. I started listening to his podcast, and he teaches a lot of great efficiency and productivity tips. And one of the things he mentions is turn off all of your notifications off your phone, because it takes, on average, science studies, someone's done this, I don't know. It takes on average, I think, a half hour, 20 minutes to 40 minutes, somewhere around there, to get in a zone where you're your most productive self. And you can only stay in that zone. I can't remember the exact numbers, but there's a limited amount of time that you can stay in that zone. Maybe it's a half hour, 2 hours, depending on your capacity. But it takes a while to get into a zone, and then you're only productive in that zone, your most productive self, for a certain amount of time until you get exhausted or need to take a break.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take a half hour to get into your optimal functioning zone, your best productive self, and then 5 minutes into that zone, you take a phone call or you check your Facebook or watch a YouTube video, you're out.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes you a half hour to get back in and be your most productive self again. And so when I'm working, when I sit down and work, all my notifications are turned off my phone. I don't take emails. I say, all right, here's my highest value activity for the day. I have this edit that needs to be done in 2 days. That means, let's break it down. That means I need to get this much done today, that much done tomorrow. Nothing's going to come before that. I'm going to get those things done. And then I can go watch my YouTube video, and then I can check my Facebook, and then I'll get to that phone call that wasn't nearly as important as finishing this job for my boss or for my client or whatever. And I think that's a skill that a lot of people don't have, especially with social media and the world we live in today. There's constant distractions. If you can learn how to be how to get into that zone quickly by turning off those notifications and then staying in it for as long as you can without being distracted, you're going to operate 10x, 5x, 10x, at a much higher productivity than you would if you were constantly doing other things in between doing that specific job. And so I always tell people, I'm like, the reason why I feel like I'm so successful is because I can get done in one day what takes most people a week to do. And that's just because I manage my time well. I lock down and I do my highest value activities first, and then I get to everything else later. And it's also tough because I work from home. And so I got my 1-year-old knocking on the door all day. I got my wife asking if I can tend. And I've had to tell her, I'm like, look, these are sacred hours for me. I need to be able to be productive in these. And then I can be 100% with the family when I'm done. And being able to do that, manage your time and prioritize your life, I think is a huge part to being successful in anything, not just filmmaking.
Yeah. No, that's spot on. I love that idea. You call it the highest value activity. We call it like number one priority. Like we do on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we meet as a team at 9:40 in the morning. Like everybody's kind of already here, but we just gather at the gathering table downstairs. Right. And everybody goes around and says like, hey, like, what's the one thing by the end of the day that you're going to have done? And it's funny because sometimes people would say like, well, I'm working on this edit. And it's like, okay, well, just like you said it a second ago, Parker, what about that edit though? Like, are you finishing it today? What state are you going to get it in today? Like, we a lot of times will get paralyzed in this because what we want to get done is more, it's a project and there's steps to that project. So if I wanted to I don't know, film a video for social today, I couldn't just put on my calendar film video. Like I need to think like, well, I actually need to write the script before I film it. Right. So that's one part, right? Let me knock that out and check that off my list. Next thing is setting up, right? That's going to be that's going to take 45 minutes, and then it's actually filming it, and then it's tearing down, and then import, so if we can break these things down into tasks rather than just like one big project, that's helpful. But then also just saying at the beginning of the day, like, what's that one thing by the end of the day that I need to get done, and how am I going to get there? So if I need to break it up into 2 different parts, I need to get this edit halfway done so that tomorrow I can finish it. I think that's super helpful for people to just think more in like a project. In a project, there are many steps, or maybe there's only 2 or 3 steps, but people can get paralyzed because they look at, do a video for social, like, golly, I don't even know where to start. So let me hop on YouTube and start watching a video, and let me check my email. It's like, no. If to start that video, or to do that video, you need a script. Cool. I can sit down for 20 minutes and start writing a script. I can do that. That's a task that I can do right now, but I can't finish a video for social right now. There's 4 steps to it. There's 5 steps to it. So that's really good.
On that note, one thing else I'll add is another trap people get stuck in is they feel really productive. Maybe they're in the zone all day long. They're not distracted, but they spent all day long on, let's give the example of creating that one social piece. They're making a 1-minute edit, but they spent an entire day creating a 3-second animation. And it's like, was that really adding that much value to your 1-minute piece? Was it that big of was that your highest value activity for the day? And the principle here that I teach is the 80-20 rule. So usually it takes 20% of your time to do 80% of the job, and then it takes 80% of your time to do that last 20%. In other words, don't be a perfectionist.
Yeah.
Get your job 80% done, 80% good, and move on. Spending that extra, trying to get that project to be that extra 10 or 20% to get perfectly the way you want it is going to take up most of your time. So I've had to teach myself, especially now where I'm pumping out, 2 or 3 tutorials a week, plus doing some client-based work on the side. And it's like, if I'm going to do this much work, none of it's going to be 100%. Because I'll never get anything done. It all has to be 80, and you got to set your threshold. Okay, this is my quality, my standard that I'm okay with being out there. Some people might mention, oh, you missed that right there, or that doesn't look perfect. And it's like, whatever, who cares? 99% of the people, especially who aren't filmmakers, aren't going to notice some of these little intricacies that aren't perfect. But in letting some of those things go and not making it be perfect, you're going to be able to get a lot more done in every single day.
Yeah. And I mean, we struggle, every editor struggles with that. It's like, you can edit a piece to death. If a client is unhappy and they're like, hey, you missed that, it's like, oh my gosh, like, let me go back and fix that. But good enough sometimes is just good enough. And the more time that we spend on a project, the less money we're making in the long run. So like, that I think people just forget that. It's like, well, I want to make it cool. If you're just a straight up artist and people are just commissioning you to just create, that's one thing. But if a client needs a project, you can't spend all day on that 3-second thing. If the piece is, 50, if it's 60-second piece, there's a lot more to that piece when you've only budgeted 3 days for you to be working on it. So if you spend a 4th day on it, guess what? You're losing money. Nobody's paying you for that 4th day. Nobody's paying you for that 5th day. And, it's super frustrating. It's super frustrating to see people just edit something to death when in the same breath, they're like, well, I'm not getting paid as much as I want, or I'm not making as much as I want. It's like, yeah, because you're spending way too much time on the piece. So it should make sense at some point. A little passionate about that. Get a little excited.
It's a tough thing everybody goes through it, especially if you're an artist, and especially if you're a perfectionist artist. But I think it is an important skill to learn, that everybody can learn and should learn if you're going to be not just an artist, but someone who is successfully surviving doing their art.
Successfully surviving. I like that. Well, I know you had one more thing you want to share, and this is one of my favorite things talking about is mentors. Like how important is it to have a mentor in this work?
So big. And I can't speak to film school because I didn't go.
You didn't go to school, so let's just put that out there.
I actually did 3 out of 4 years of college. So I'm
just teasing.
I have one more semester left, or I think.
Oh man, just do it.
And I was just like, but I almost don't want to now, just to say I did it.
Yeah.
Like, I made it in film school. Just stick it to the man.
That's
No,
funny.
but I didn't go to film school, so I can't speak. I don't speak against film school, but
Yeah.
I have had a lot of students of mine that have spoken against film school, having
Mhm.
had me as a virtual mentor, that have said, "Man, just having your personal help and your personal guidance has been way more valuable to me than my entire 4 years of film school." And that's individuals. I'm not speaking on the whole for that. I know there's
Yeah.
great programs out there, but that just kind of shows you the importance and the power of having a good mentor. Is especially if that mentor is someone whose work you want to replicate, whose results you like
Right.
and want to fashion your work after. Go find mentors, go find people, whose work you want to replicate and learn from them. Shorten your learning curve by doing what they've done, by learning from the things they've already learned from, and by applying the things they're doing that is making them successful. For me, it was DevinSuperTramp.
Mm.
I was lucky enough to have him as a mentor for a couple of years, and I attribute a lot of my success to that, to the fact that as I'm editing a project, I can say, "Hey, I don't know how to do this," and he's like, "Oh yeah, just do that," instead of having to go watch YouTube tutorials for 5 hours, or sending him an edit and having him say, "It's a great edit, but you missed this, this, and
Mhm.
this. Usually when you do these sequences, you don't want to do that. And when you do this, you want to make sure you don't do this." And it's like that kind of stuff takes people years to learn,
Yep.
just by trial and error, and eventually one day going, "Oh, that doesn't look good." And
Mhm.
then eventually making those. So I always tell people, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And so some people say, "Well, I can just get all this information on YouTube." Well, it's like, yeah, you can get a lot of information on YouTube,
Yep.
but if you don't know what you don't know, what are you looking for?
Right. Right.
You know,
Yep.
you can't find everything on YouTube if you don't know everything that you need,
Mhm.
right? And so having a mentor, somebody who is being successful and knows some of the things you need, and
Right.
especially when it comes to YouTube, a lot of the crap you don't need, and they
Right.
can they can help they can help walk you through that and shorten your learning curve. And I tell people, it's like, would you rather, in the case of studio Sherpas and full-time filmmaker, um, I think we both kind of act as those virtual mentors to help
Mhm.
shorten people's learning curves. And there is a fee that comes with that, but it's like,
Right.
I'm telling people, would you rather spend $400 or $500
Right.
or 4 or 5 years of your life? Is
Mhm.
4 or 5 years of your life of learning from trial and error and watching a bunch of YouTube garbage, is that not worth $400 or $500? I hope
Right.
it is.
Right.
I hope you value those years of your life more than a few $100s.
Yeah, seriously.
And so I'm super passionate about mentoring, because I was mentored by someone who helped me grow really fast.
Mhm.
And I've helped mentor a lot of people who've been able to grow really fast, specifically my current employee who was a full-time filmmaker student of mine. And within 3 months of buying the program, buying a camera, he quit his current job and was doing full-time wedding videography and commercial videography. And that's super rewarding to see someone like
Mhm.
him who, and not everyone can do it, because not everyone
Yep.
has the work ethic. Not everybody has the passion. Not everybody, you know, I hate to say it, but there is some level of artistic ability that you
Sure.
need to have in filmmaking to be able to succeed. Some people just don't have any eye for it. And it's like, as much as the technical cameras, if you have
Mhm.
no artistic eye, then you just might not be able to make it. But
Yep.
so there are a few variables that need to be there, but it's just really cool seeing somebody be able to go from zero to full time in 3 months, simply by having a mentorship
Mhm.
program, somebody who's done it before and just replicating pretty much verbatim the steps they've taken to get up and running very quickly. And then
Mhm.
obviously you expand upon what you learn from them and create your own style.
Mhm.
But I always tell people, because you see a lot of successful guys on YouTube, and you see a lot of copycats, people who create content like them, and then a bunch of people commenting on their videos saying, "You're just copying so and so,"
Right.
and it's like, well, good for him. He's learning,
Mhm.
and eventually he'll create his own style.
Right.
And so I always see people recreating videos with the same music I did, with the same style of mine, and I'm like, good for them.
Yeah.
They're learning, they're growing, and right now it looks a lot like mine, but eventually they'll
Right.
find their own style and they'll
Yeah.
expand upon that. But you have to start somewhere, and
Yes.
starting with a mentor and learning from their mistakes and from their successes, I think, is the best place to start.
I think that's really good. Yeah, that's really good. I remember like my first probably year as a filmmaker, everything I was doing, you know, I was at the college I went to, they didn't have anybody that did video for them. So I was the first person that was doing video for them. And then I was doing videos on these youth retreats, and they didn't really have somebody going on a youth retreat making a video to play like on the Sunday morning before everybody went home. So they were like, these are the best. And so I was getting so many pats on the back, but it was because there was no standard. There was nothing to compare to. It was like, first we didn't have video. Now we do. This is amazing. Thank you so much. This is the best thing we've ever seen. And then finally, I had somebody, a mentor, come alongside who, you know, he'd hired me to do some work for their youth group, and I'm doing these videos, and he's like, oh, this is a bad font. Like, you know, get a cleaner font. It's got to be smaller, tighter, all this. And I'm like, he's just talking about the font. And then he had, you know, feedback on the shots and all this stuff. Right. But I'm like, this is what I longed for. I didn't long for people to like tell me great job. I wanted to get better.
Yeah.
So that idea of getting a mentor, I mean, I am on the same page with you, man. Like you can to have a Yoda, you know, or an Obi-Wan in your life that can just help guide and give you honest feedback, not just the stuff that you want to hear, like, oh, this is great, but kind of push them back and say like, what, you know, why did you do that? Why did you make that decision? Mm-hmm. And learning how to make choices with intention for a reason, and then being open to saying like, yeah, you're right, it's probably bad. I should probably work on this a little bit more. And that is the good stuff. And I also love that idea of, you know, just, it's totally okay. Cause I remember early on too, like seeing somebody's video, I'm like, I can do that exact shot. Yeah. And then when we were doing weddings, I remember that Jason McBonwa did this like cool ring thing, right? Like the wedding ring spinning. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the coolest thing. And then, so, you know, like 20 weddings later, we're like exact same shot. And then eventually we stopped doing it. We were doing variations of it and whatever, but to learn like on a level, that's how you do it. And yeah, anyway, that's really good stuff. So how can people get plugged into Full-Time Filmmaker? Help us know you, man.
Yeah. So you can check out Full-Time Filmmaker at fulltimefilmmaker.com. It's
I see what you did there. That's good.
Yeah. It's about 35 hours of training content. I walk you through. People always ask, does it cover the very big? I don't know anything. Can I still take it? So yes. So that's kind of where it's aimed towards is I take somebody who doesn't know anything about it. They just know they want to try it out. Teach you what camera gear to buy, what to look for in cameras, lenses, stabilizers, all that, the pros and cons between different brands. Then the technical side of learning the jargon of white balance, ISO, shutter speed, aperture, how those work in conjunction, you know, all the little intricacies of your camera, where things are. And then the creative side, I show you, obviously it's my creative side. And I tell you, take what I do, learn from it, but then again, expand upon it once you feel the creative juices flowing inside of you and say, you know, I don't like what Parker does here. I'm going to do this different. And like you were saying, you know, and then, so I teach my whole creative process, everything I do from the camera movements to the storytelling. And then I go through my whole editing process. I use Premiere Pro. I also teach in Final Cut Pro X because that's where I started. So I have 2 little mini courses teaching my entire editing workflow from where to save your footage to how to start a new project to how to interpret your footage to how to bring into the timeline to the creative process on the timeline to the color correction, sound design. So just the whole process to the export and delivering to client. And then I have a final section that kind of takes you through what we're talking about right now, the business side of it. How do you actually make money once you've learned those skills? How do you get yourself out there? How do you attract paying clients? And then what I'm doing a lot right now and what I post a lot on YouTube to bring people into the full-time filmmaker world to learn about my brand is I do a lot of virtual job shadows. So every time I do a paying job for a client, I'll bring a behind the scenes guy. I'll invite some full-time filmmakers from the membership program, invite them onto my set. So we usually have 5 or 10 people on sets there with me, just wherever I'm at in the world. If you're around, come join me. I share my schedule in the group. And I was in Malaysia a couple of years ago, and my baggage got stuck. And I needed my glide cam for my shoot the next day. And so I posted on my Facebook group. I said, is there anybody in Malaysia from our group that can bring me a glide cam to borrow? And someone was in Singapore, had a glide cam, drove 4 hours to come shadow me and let me use his glide cam. So it's really cool. No matter where I'm at in the world, I get to meet all kinds of members from our group, and we learn from each other and grow together. So a lot of my YouTube content, you can go to Parker Walbeck, my YouTube channel, check out a ton of free virtual job shadows and free content that I put out there online for you guys to kind of see my teaching style and to learn from me there. And then at the end of every YouTube video, I'm saying, hey, go check out the program if you want to join the full thing, or I have a free webinar as well. I give away my top 10 secrets to cinematic shots and just give away as much free value as I can, teaching you as much as I can in an hour to just help any of you guys who maybe don't have the funds yet to learn as much as you can from me. And then I offer, of course, a discount at the end of that webinar, which we'll also be giving this discount through Ryan, through Studio Sherpas. So they'll be able to offer you the same discount there.
Love it. Yeah, we'll put links in the show notes as well. And I love it, man. You're definitely a teacher at heart, and your work is stinking good. So definitely check it out if you're listening. And anything left that we didn't talk about that you're just like, man, I can't believe Ryan didn't ask me this one question.
I think you asked some great questions. You covered some great topics. I think I'll just go back to what I think is the biggest point for a lot of people who are struggling, and that is just to be confident in yourself, continue to grow, take opportunities to grow, take free or cheap gigs. If you don't have anything, if you don't have any gigs, just to keep yourself growing, because the more you create, the better you get, and the more clients will eventually attract. And just having that initial confidence when you're not feeling good about your business or feeling good about your skills, I think is the biggest thing. And just telling yourself, let's be productive today. Let's go take a new opportunity. Let's be creative and come up with something. You know, it's like, if I want to work for a certain brand, like I wanted to work for Apple. So I went and created an iPhone commercial, basically. Now I didn't attract Apple, but I attracted LG, you know, so it's like, it's good enough. Right.
Yeah.
You know, but that's the point, is it's like, do projects that you, because whatever you shoot, I always tell people this too, whatever you shoot, whatever type of content you shoot, is the type of content you're going to get hired for.
Yeah. Yep,
so go shoot content that you want to get hired for. And so a lot of people get stuck in like the wedding vein or whatever vein they happen to start in. And that's because that's the only content you're shooting. If you want to get out of that, if you don't want to keep shooting weddings, or if you're more passionate about this type, then go shoot a bunch of that. And you're probably going to have to do a few free projects before people actually start hiring you for it. And so, you know, that's another thing too, is people get stuck doing video projects they're not passionate about.
Yeah.
And if they're not passionate about it, as Steve Jobs says, you only do your best work if you love what you do. And so you're not going to be showing forth your best filmmaking abilities if you're doing projects you hate. Right. And so put yourself out there doing projects you love, doing projects in the types of industries you want to get hired for, even if it does mean having to do a few for free. And that's going to, one, allow you to expand your skill sets in those arenas, but two, eventually start attracting clients in those arenas.
Yes. Well said, my friend. That's really, really good. Well, I'm excited for what you got cooking for the future, and wish you nothing but the best. And hopefully we can work on some stuff in the future. If you're ever in Michigan, and if you're still using a glide cam or a Zion crane or whatever, we've got a couple of those around the studio, and, you know,
nice. I'll hit you up.
Break this up. We're here for you, man. But this is super good, Parker. I'm so glad to have done this, and just appreciate it so much.
Great meeting you too, Ryan, and you guys keep up the good work too. And all you studio Sherpas out there, listen to these fellas. They know what they're talking about. Listen to your mentors. Let them guide you, Master Yoda.
Thanks, man.
No, you're awesome, Ryan. Keep up the good work as well.
Thanks, buddy. If you are interested in Parker's free training, which I do recommend you check out, hit up studiosherpas.com/Parker and sign up for that. And also, you can find all of the show notes at studiosherpas.com/106. If you've never been to the show notes page, we list out all the links and the stuff that we talked about in the episode there. So it's just kind of a quick glance. You can go to any of the links, references, whatever, you know, if we mentioned books or other websites or anything like that. So you can check all that stuff out there at studiosherpas.com/106. Here is this week's testimonial from Britton Lettingham. Thanks, Ryan and the Studio Sherpas team. I've been listening to your podcast since I went full-time into my business almost 2 years ago. It's been helpful. Thanks for doing all that you do for people like me. Thanks, Britton. Britton, thank you so much. keep those reviews coming in, friends. I love reading them. You can leave a review at the iTunes store if you go to studiosherpas.com/iTunes. Feel free to share this episode with a friend if you think they can get something out of it too. That would be awesome. Something new for 2019 is community. Go to studiosherpas.com/community to find out more. You're not going to want to miss this. And next week, we have an amazing storyteller and success story for you. Emmy Award-winning Joyce Sang from Only Today joins us, and she does not disappoint. Here is a sneak peek at next week's episode.
If I had waited until I was ready, whatever that means, to do what I do, to make the jump from being an engineer to a filmmaker, or to direct a narrative short, or to DP a big piece for so-and-so, it's like if you wait till you're ready, you'll be on sidelines for the rest of your life. Like, there's no such things as you're ready. Sure, you could be more ready or not, but like, just get out there and do it.
If you don't know Joyce, you're going to love it. Really, really excited about that episode. Keep climbing, my friend. The job of a Sherpa is to help others up the mountain, and we are here to help our clients be guided in the process of video. As a Sherpa, we haven't arrived yet. We should be constantly training and growing and being sharpened. So don't stop practicing, refining, being challenged, growing. The better that you become, the more help that you can offer to your clients. So keep on, my friend. Till next time, this is Ryan Coral signing out.